Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. Brian Neubert joins me. I want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, Basham Reynolds, Hilton Garden Inn, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson. We always have our fan in the area too. With Chad Evans is WLFI News, or not weather, I should say. Much more important.
The weather's always news.
It is news.
They're
and
inextricably
Chad does
linked.
a great job of doing that, and he will be at the game tomorrow as well. As Valentine's, I'm not spoiling anything. Valentine's gift for his wonderful wife Liz. But Brian, I'm not going to ask you what you gave Amy for Valentine's Day, but I am going to ask you about what you saw. You talked to Matt Payne a little bit ago. What's getting a gauge of where this basketball team is after a disappointing game Tuesday, especially second half at Maryland.
Right. Well, obviously they're in a position they've not been in a while. This is their only their second loss since the end of December. So Purdue's not had to respond to failure per se in quite a while. The second half of that game obviously did not go well. I think the lessons from the second half are no different than what they should always be for this team. They've got to be patient. They have to move the basketball. They have to not shoot the first time a shot presents itself. You have to give Maryland a lot of credit. I thought they really, really ramped up their pressure really, really well. I thought the move to put Anthony Cowan, their point guard, on Ryan Klein, I thought was a good one because it allowed them a quicker, faster player to stay with Klein, maybe a little bit better than some other wing defenders might have. But Purdue just has to be patient. If Purdue had just played like Purdue's been playing for the majority of this winning streak, things probably would have turned out differently. I'm not necessarily saying Purdue would have won because Maryland did a lot of other things right, but Purdue had no chance the way it played because of the way it played. And, we've talked on and on all season long about how everything Carson Edwards does, because of the gravity he carries with this team, affects this entire team. And when he gets into these spells of over-aggressiveness, when he's responding to the crowd and when he's responding to the guy across from him in the other uniform, and he loses his composure a little bit, it affects everybody around him. And I'm not necessarily blaming just him for the second half. Everyone had a hand in it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But obviously poise has to come from the top, and it did not after halftime at Maryland. And Purdue needs to make sure it sticks to what got it here. And Purdue needs to play the way it had been playing through the bulk of that winning streak.
Do you, and we were talking to Brian Walker also about the whole notion of taking, all right, it's a loss, and losses happen in the Big Ten. It's not that simple. I mean, the sky is not falling, but you never want to lose games also when you have an 8-point lead at the half, too, where you had a chance to win. So is it as simple as saying, you lose games, and this happens? What's your take on that?
I think it's as simple as saying Purdue was going to lose a game again the rest of the season. They were not going to win out. Maryland is really good, and you're playing at Maryland, which is not an easy place to play. There is no shame whatsoever in losing at Maryland. This changes next to nothing for Purdue. What this win could have been, obviously, would have been another great resume win. It would have been a huge win in the Big Ten race. It didn't happen. But just because it could have been that, but isn't because of what happened, I think the two things have to be kept mutually exclusive from one another. Purdue lost a game it probably could reasonably have been expected to lose, whereas you could have been Michigan, you could have lost at Penn State when you're the co-leader in the Big Ten. Now Purdue has to be careful not to fall in the same trap on its own home floor. They have to make sure that one dreadful half of basketball does not lead into a dreadful first half of basketball against a team that damn near beat you a couple of games ago.
Yeah, the next three games, and I know that Purdue's not doing it this way because they're smart. They're looking at one game at a time. But interesting because Penn State, Indiana, Nebraska, the next three, 2 of the 3 on the road. All teams that have really struggled at certain points of the season. Though Penn State, you have to say, is trending upward. It's hard to argue that. Just the job that Pat Chambers' team has done of late. My point is that you've got 3 teams that on paper you should handle, but they're all 3 dangerous. Even Nebraska gave Purdue a tussle for 30 minutes plus in Mackey Arena. I mean, they're all dangerous. Every game they have left, I would argue, is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and these are all high-leverage games now, too, because your season has changed so much from December that losses are now landmines. Losses aren't just the cost of doing business in a rebuilding year. As I said before, Purdue's just got to they've got to stick to what got them here. And a lot of what got them here is stuff they can control. For the most part, you can control not turning the ball over, good decision making, good shots. Defensive effort, obviously, is something that Purdue has been pretty good with the majority of this winning streak, but still can come and go periodically.
We've seen that,
among certain individuals that influence everything else.
Yeah.
Purdue just has to make sure the effort's good, the decision making's good, the poise is there, all of those things. One bad half of basketball at Maryland doesn't change what Purdue did prior to Maryland, and the reasons Purdue is in that position in the first place have to continue to be adhered to. These are not easy games coming up. On paper, Purdue has the easiest path. That should not be confused with Purdue has an easy path.
Yeah.
When you compare what Purdue has to what Michigan, Michigan State, and everybody else has, Purdue has the quote-unquote easiest path, but there is no easy path, per se.
This is the strongest, I will say, at least in all my years of watching. I cannot remember a year where the Big Ten from 1 to 14, there's landmines everywhere you turn. I mean, I think Purdue has another blessing of its schedule. They're not going to Illinois. It may be a tough game when Illinois comes to Purdue.
Well, Rutgers, too.
And Rutgers is, a team you just destroyed at home, and Rutgers has been very, very competitive all the way through. When you look at Penn State, Illinois, and Rutgers, the bottom three teams in the league, I believe, in terms of standing, no, that's not true, because I think Rutgers has won many or more Big Ten games than Indiana. My point is that, but again, landmines all the way, everywhere you turn. All right, Treyvion Williams and Matt Harms, and I don't mean to make it that simple, but I'm going to ask you first about Treyvion Williams in terms of, is it a case now where guys, is it a scouting deal in terms of, has he got to morph into Treyvion Williams 2.0 to continue to be effective? I know the fouls are kind of put the damper on everything at College Park, but give me, you've written about your take on what he's doing, but give us your thumbnail view.
Well, he has to stay out of foul trouble. When he was out of foul trouble, he was productive against Maryland. There was the sequence where he got the ball 2 straight possessions. Nojel Eastern got a putback off of a good look, and then Treyvion Williams scored over Bruno Fernando. In the second half, he had the 2 putbacks. He never got the ball on a true post touch in the second half because Purdue was jacking jumpers the whole half. He never had continuity on his side because of the foul trouble. Now, why is he getting in foul trouble? I think opponents are doing a better job understanding how to attack him on defense. But also, I think some of his vulnerabilities that he was able to overcome or cover up early on are being exposed a little bit better. When you diagnose the fouls, people are putting him in ball screen defense. They're getting him to turn his shoulders, and they're getting him to reach. He's not moving his feet. He's not as quick as maybe he was earlier in this stretch of games where he started playing. Where's his conditioning right now? We talk a lot about freshman walls with freshmen. They almost all have them at some point. His season has been an atypical one because he wasn't playing big minutes right away. That being said, he was busy losing 50 pounds on the fly. So we don't know where he is from a conditioning standpoint. He doesn't look as energetic, as active as he did earlier on. You certainly hope he's not lapsing in his conditioning at all. He might be getting a little bit tired. That's perfectly understandable. That is what happens to freshmen. That is what happens to 260-pound freshmen. That is just life. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But Purdue needs him on the floor. They need him established because he's too important offensively. Matt Harms, obviously, is too important defensively. The two of them, if you could make them one player, you would have a first-team All-American. But Purdue's better defensively with Matt Harms on the floor. He is playing very well offensively. I think people are taking away the screen and roll a little bit more than they were earlier in the year. Purdue's to the point in the season where they're scouted. Everybody knows everything about Purdue. So now, how does Purdue counterpunch that? What does Purdue come up with, if it has to come up with anything, to counteract the counteraction being levied against it? The simple solution is continue to not turn the ball over and take better shots. And they did neither of those. Well, they didn't do one of those things in the second half at Maryland for sure.
No doubt. And they had some turnovers, so they didn't have many, but they had some crucial ones at times that certainly did not help Purdue's cause. All right, we've been asking everybody the question, and it's an unfair one, but will Purdue win the Big Ten, a share of the Big Ten championship in your view, or will you not even bite on that?
Yeah, I still want to see how Purdue responds to a loss. I still want to see if, to be honest with you, I want to see if Purdue is as good as it looked during the 8-game winning streak. Every team encounters rough patches during college basketball seasons. Purdue's had better teams than this one just randomly go through 3-game losing streaks,
Yeah.
either earlier in the Big Ten season, like one of Robbie Hummel's teams did. I remember the loss vividly at Northwestern the one year.
Yeah.
Last year's team obviously lost the 2 big games and then went to Wisconsin and played its worst game, I think, imaginable.
Yeah.
Purdue is going to struggle at some point. Now, the question was, did they struggle in almost losing at Penn State and very reasonably almost losing to Minnesota at home? Or do they have to lose to get that struggle out of the way? Or was December their struggles,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense?
Yeah.
I chalk up the Maryland game to losing on the home floor of a really good team. That is not about Purdue, that's about Maryland. We will see how Purdue responds to it. But Purdue, at least to me, still has to prove itself a little bit.
Yeah, and you got a major. Not only will Penn State be dangerous, but obviously going to Indiana, as much as the Hoosiers have struggled too, will be a huge challenge for Purdue.
Well, you can't look at some of these records. You
Yeah.
can't look at some of the prior results. You don't really care what Indiana's record is when you play there. You remember Purdue a couple times went there with Robbie Hummel's teams.
Almost lost.
They were a heavy favorite,
Yeah.
and there was the one year Tom Pritchard, I think, dunked off screen and roll like
Yeah.
6 times in the first half. There was the one Tyrone Johnson as a freshman had to make that huge 3 at the other
Yeah.
end. Maybe those were the same games.
Yeah.
I don't know.
78 to 75.
There were
Yep.
at least 2 games in Bloomington that
Yeah.
Purdue was the overwhelming favorite that they had to fight like hell to win. That stuff happens in that rivalry, and when you have players, and Indiana does have players,
Yeah.
you have to really be careful. I know you beat Minnesota. You still have to go to Minnesota. Keep in mind, at Mackey Arena, you were down 13 points with 14 minutes to go to that same team. And now you're going to have to play them on the road later. As I said before, Purdue on paper has the easiest, I prefer the term user-friendly,
Yeah.
the most user-friendly path the rest of the way relative to what it could have, relative to what everybody else has, but it is not a user-friendly path by any means.
Yeah, agreed. All right, it's going to be an interesting thing, and check Brian's analysis and then some, all of his great coverage on Purdue men's basketball on goldenblack.com. All right, next week we will do our show, and it's not totally due to Brian's travel schedule, it's partially due. We're going to do our show on Thursday. That's the plan, at least, if Kurt and Gordon can make this happen at WLFI. We will have Sean Pugh as one of our guests, and Brian obviously will break down before he heads to Nebraska on Friday for Purdue's game in Lincoln on Saturday. So stay tuned for that. Then for that show, special time next week. I want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, on the hill but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929, Basham Reynolds, and John Basham and all the good folks there that are busy with 2019-20 rentals, and of course Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day. Stay at HDI tonight. State Farm agent Trent Johnson is Trent is myagent.com, and we want to thank Gordon and Brad, and I don't know if Ryan got involved today, Steve Clark, everybody at WLFI that helps make this show happen. We appreciate that very much. And we'll be back next Thursday, special show date, I should say, for Golden Black Live. Have a great week, everybody. Have a great weekend, and stay warm.